She's the most liberal senator I've known since I've been in the Senate. There's no liberal horse that she won't ride.
Really? Is that what you say, Lindsey Graham? No liberal horse she won't ride. I didn't know there were liberal horses and conservative horses. Maybe he's saying something else. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh. It is the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in for my friend Chris Plant. Happy Friday, Friday-lujah to you. Lindsey Graham making a comment about Kamala Harris. Kind of a little double entendre there, I think. But, you know, I do believe that the Republicans should focus on the extreme liberalism of Kamala Harris. Just the insane liberalism of Kamala Harris. I played a little clip yesterday showing you just how far left she is. And then I started doing some research over the last 24 hours and found even more clips from leaders in the Democrat Party who were just ecstatic in 2020 when Kamala Harris was the nominee. And when Kamala Harris became known for just her extreme liberalism, for the fact that she was so far left, Michael Moore was gushing. Now, Michael Moore probably gushes on a regular basis. I think if he ever does exercise, he probably sweats gravy. But that's a different topic altogether. But Michael Moore was verbally gushing about Kamala Harris. Michael Moore wanted us to know just how excited he was that Joe Biden had picked her. He didn't have to pick her. He had so many options that he could have chosen. But no, Michael Moore, the corpulent one, was on a video stream with Rashida Tlaib, and they were answering election questions. And the word about Kamala Harris came out, and Michael Moore, he was just very excited. This was October of 2020, a virtual town hall, Rashida Tlaib. Bernie Sanders was there, too. But Michael Moore, as I said, gushing over Kamala and her liberalism.
And I believe that even though Joe Biden does not share our politics, those of you who voted for Bernie, progressive voters out there, Joe Biden could have picked any of a number of people. He could have gone to the right or to the left when he had a choice to pick his vice president. He went to the left. He went to, as Trump reminds us every day, he picked the most liberal senator in the United States Senate. That's saying a lot, considering Bernie is in the U.S. Senate. So I have a lot of trust in this. And
so Michael Moore in 2020, with Bernie Sanders and Rashida Tlaib present as they were holding an online town hall, were gushing about how liberal Kamala Harris was, more liberal than Bernie Sanders. It is amazing how they're going to try and change that right now. How they are going to try and recast Kamala Harris. It's almost as if they want to bring in another actor to the role, but they're just going to tell us differently. Like they're telling us that Kamala Harris, well, no, she never really was the border czar. That's not a thing. We played you a little bit about it yesterday of how the Democrats were telling us, no, the Democrats and their cohorts in the media. She was never the border czar, even though that's all they called her. And yesterday there was a piece of legislation passed in the House, bipartisan piece of legislation to condemn the Biden administration's ultimate failure at the border and naming the border czar Kamala Harris in that action, saying that she failed. Democrats voted for it. You know how the mainstream media and the Democrats like to say, well, there was a border bill. It was a bipartisan border bill, and Donald Trump prevented it from passing. No, he didn't, and it really wasn't bipartisan, the border bill, and it was a disaster anyway. Well, in this case, this piece of legislation passed with 6 Democrats signing on, saying that border czar Kamala Harris was a failure. It's in the record. It's right there. Nobody said you got to strike the words border czar. It's right there. But let's go back 2 years ago, just about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, September, Chuck Todd on Meet the Press talking to Kamala Harris about the border, because she was the border czar. Of course, that's why she was there. Talking to Kamala Harris back in September of 2022, Kamala told us not once but twice that the border was secure. How many millions of people have crossed the border since that time? How many tens of thousands of Chinese nationals, military age, that we don't know who they are and where they are across that border? How many people on the terror watch list crossed the border in that time, just in September of 2022? I'd like to know, but the border's secure, right?
I want to ask you about the border. Would you call the border secure?
I think that there is no question that we have to do what the president and I asked Congress to do. Is the first request we made: pass a bill to create a pathway to citizenship. The border is secure, but we also have a broken immigration system, in particular over the last 4 years before we came in, and it needs to be fixed.
So the border is secure, and we're only 28 seconds into this 1 minute clip. According to Kamala Harris, the border is secure right now, and it's more secure than it was in the previous 4 years, even though the numbers of people crossing in the first 2 years of this administration dwarfed the numbers that crossed in 4 years of a Donald Trump administration. But she's going to once again tell us that the border is secure.
2 million people cross this border for the first time ever. You're confident this border is secure?
We have a secure border in that is a priority for any nation, including ours and our administration.
So it's a priority for any nation and your administration. And you're telling us it's secure. And this was 2022, and now in 2024, I believe, we should check the numbers, but I believe they've at least doubled it since the first 2 years.
But there are still a lot of problems that we are trying to fix, given the deterioration that happened over the last 4 years. We also have to put in place a law and a plan for a pathway for citizenship.
We have that. We have a pathway for citizenship. There is a way for people to come to the country to say, I'd like to be a citizen. What do I need to do? Here's who I am. I'll even pay money. Many people have waited 5, 6, 7 years, paid tens of thousands of dollars, gone through the process, and become citizens. There's a pathway. It exists. Stop telling us there isn't a pathway. Stop lying to the American people. I just hope all of this keeps coming out. It has to continue to keep coming out. And the more we can show Kamala Harris is the farthest left liberal the Democrats could have chosen, then that's going to be helpful for Donald Trump. And we are seeing new polling data. I talked about it in the first hour today on the Chris Plant Show. There is new polling data out there. And I know yesterday a lot of people were freaking out because over at CNBC, Jim Cramer, he's kind of a cartoon character who talks about stocks, and he plays sounds when he talks about certain companies. And I'm not sure if his picks are always that good or bad. Somebody monitors that stuff. But Jim Cramer's come out and endorsed Kamala Harris. So he's got the CNBC crazy guy vote, which is interesting. And then earlier today at 5:01 East Coast time today, just over 5 hours ago, Barack and Michelle Obama released a heavily edited, pre-produced video of a phone call between themselves and Kamala Harris made earlier in the week, endorsing Kamala Harris. We played it earlier, and maybe we'll play a clip from it later. But the polling is really interesting. And one of the most important polls that I think the Trump administration should completely exploit, and I use that word exploit with great reverence, is the poll that shows that more than 3/5 of Americans believe Kamala Harris was involved in covering up Joe Biden's declining health. These are two polls. Now, Joe announced on Sunday he was dropping out, right? So there are two separate polls. Harris poll shows, first of all, Donald Trump +8 over Kamala Harris. It's funny that the Harris poll shows Trump 8 points ahead of Kamala Harris. But in the Daily Express and Express News poll, 62% of Americans say that Kamala Harris lied about Joe Biden's health. More than two-thirds of the voters believe Kamala Harris lied about Joe Biden's health. That should be in an ad. A YouGov poll done for the Times showed that 54% believe Biden's health issues were covered up. 68% in the YouGov poll said they felt Harris had a great deal to do with concealing the truth about Joe Biden's health. The Democracy Institute poll, 62%. Kamala Harris lied. This is amazing. This happened between July 22nd and 23rd, 1,100 registered voters. And the margin of error is like 3%. So this is an overwhelming poll that shows the majority of Americans believe that this is just a lying candidate who covered it up. Now, why did she lie? Why did she cover it up? Maybe she had a vested interest in keeping Joe Biden in the race until such time as they could line up the plan to get her to be the candidate, the nominee, without ever having to get a single vote. So how many bodies did it take in the Democratic Party to negate 14 million votes? How many bodies? I wonder. But just remember, she was among the people in the media and in the Democrat Party, elected Democrat officials, to tell us that Joe Biden was, as they say, sharp as a tack. Shame on you, Chris Coons. That's my senator from Delaware saying that Joe Biden is sharp as a tack. And, of course, the ironically named Joy Behar telling us, his brain is good. Your brain isn't good, young lady. Your brain is broken, too. Oh, it is embarrassing. They all should be embarrassed. I think there is vulnerability for Kamala Harris on this issue of her inability to tell the truth. The Democrats are always saying, Donald Trump lies. Well, we need to fact check these people. We also need to hold their feet to the fire on everything. I want to talk more about Kamala and her candidacy. And some of you are calling in and saying, hey, we have some things to bring up as well. So I will step aside for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll go to the phones. It is Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on this Friday. Hallelujah to you. You made it to a Friday in a crazy week. It is the Chris Plant Show.
You're listening to the Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in for my friend Chris Plant. He's on a boat somewhere. Good for him. Happy to be here. Thrilled to be here. Honored to be here to talk with all of you and cover the news du jour. And there is a boatload of it, keeping with the nautical theme. And a lot of it relates to the presumptive nominee for the Democrat Party, the newly anointed Kamala Harris. I think she's got a problem. I think she's got a problem with the fact that she told us for so long that Joey Biden was just fine, that he was sharp as a razor. And that's not the case, and we know that. And now she's pretending to be the president. Yesterday, meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu and telling us what a what a toughie she is. And she's not. She's pandering. But she has more vulnerabilities. Joe is in Purcellville, Virginia. Hey, Joe, welcome to the Chris Plant Show. Joe on line 3 is with us. Is he or not? Joe, do we have you? No. Guess we lost him. All right, let's go to Mark in Independence, Missouri. Hello, Mark. Line 1, no?
Media.
Hello. Is that Mark?
Yes.
Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, as you've been telling us, the corrupt media has been trying to tell us that Kamala Harris was never the border czar, but it seems they'd be celebrating it. As a soundbite you just played, the border's been secure for 3.5 years. Biden just said in his pitiful speech the other night that the border is more secure now than when he came to office, and Mayorkas said it's been secure. And, of course, the news media has been barely covering it, and they've called Republicans exaggerators and saying they were anti-immigrant. So now with them running away from Kamala as the border czar, they've basically been admitting they've been lying for 3.5 years. And as Chris often says, the news media, they're the most corrupt institution in the country, and they've proved it again. This is just so transparent.
And this is going to be on display at the convention in a few weeks in Chicago. There is a report that another 25,000 illegals are headed to Chicago, and the strain on the city of Chicago's budget is just insane. And the people who relied on the city, the citizens of Chicago who relied on the city for services, are finally getting angry enough to stand up and say, hey, this lady didn't do her job. This administration did not do its job. Our country is overrun. And guess what? At the ballot box, they need to pay a price, not just at the top, but all the way down. This has to have negative coattails against Democrats. But right now, it looks like it's still a battle for the House. The battle for the Senate is not assured to go to the GOP. And with Kamala and some of the polling, it's still questionable if Trump has the ability to push through. We'll get into it more. I've got more polling data to share with you. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on this Friday on The Chris Plant Show.
This is The Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show on a Friday. Mike Opelka in for my friend Chris Plant. He's on vacation. Thanks for being here. There's so much going on today. And I also want to make sure we understand yesterday morning, Donald Trump was on Fox and Friends. And it was the morning after many of us witnessed what happened in D.C., at the monument outside of Union Station, two monuments, the bell and then the statue and the fountain area there, both covered in graffiti and defaced by anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas terror groups, the people that took the American flags down, burned them and stomped on them. And then Mike Johnson and a few members of the Republican caucus went by that night and reinstalled the American flags and said the Pledge of Allegiance there. Thank God. And Donald Trump called Fox and Friends, did a little interview yesterday morning, and there are people who are giving him a hard time over something he said. There are people who are distressed over Donald Trump's take on the desecration of the American flag, in case you missed it.
And I think you should get a 1-year jail sentence if you do anything to desecrate the American flag. Now, people will say, oh, it's unconstitutional. Those are stupid people. Those are stupid people that say that. We have to work in Congress to get a 1-year jail sentence when they're allowed to stomp on the flag and put lighter fluid on the flag and set it afire. And when you're allowed to do that, you get a 1-year jail sentence and you'll never see it again. And all over the world, Putin and President Xi of China, all over the world, they're watching this. Kim Jong-un, he looks at us like we're a bunch of babies.
So that discussion has a lot of people saying, well, that's crazy. It's protected speech. Donald Trump believes that the flag should be respected. The flag should be honored. The flag should be protected. And he would like a 1-year jail sentence for people who desecrate the flag. And I remember when my late father and I had this discussion, because there was a time when people were saying, well, you can't make clothing out of the American flag because technically you're cutting up a flag to make a shirt or pants or whatever they were doing. And there were some gray areas that people talked about. For the people that are concerned about what Donald Trump said yesterday. I wonder if they have any thoughts on what Joe Biden said at one time when he was a senator in the United States Senate, talking about a bill that would throw people in jail for burning or trampling on or damaging the American flag in any way. And it makes you wonder what happened to this Joe Biden.
Our diversity naturally pushes us apart, not together. But what holds us together as a nation, Mr. President, is not a common language, although I think that is necessary. It is the national symbol.
Now, first of all, I wonder, because I thought our diversity was our strength. At least I thought that's what we were. We were diverse, and that made us stronger and better. But this was Joe Biden way back then. I guess he was maybe a little bit racist back then when he was a senator, saying that our diversity pushes us apart. I missed that the first time because I was focused on the flag thing. Let me go back to that a little bit.
Our diversity naturally pushes us apart, not together. But what holds us together as a nation, Mr. President, is not a common language, although I think that is necessary. It is the national symbol. The reason it is worth preserving is because it unifies this diverse nation.
So Joe Biden here in the Senate sounding like Donald Trump, talking about the flag and how important the flag is.
The flag's unique place in our national life means that we should preserve it against all manner of destruction.
Against all manner of destruction. And two things come to mind. When did he change? And now you can see the obvious cognitive decline between Senator Biden and the current President Biden in terms of his ability to speak. Because he's not really reading off a teleprompter here.
A statute making it unlawful to burn, mutilate, or trample upon any flag of the United States, period. It doesn't matter who burns or mutilates or tramples the flag, and it doesn't matter why. Under my proposal, it will be unlawful to do the flag harm, no ifs, ands, or buts. I think that we can and that we should tell everyone they can't burn the flag.
So anybody who has a problem with Donald Trump saying you can't burn the flag then should have a problem with Joe Biden. And I'm wondering, we're not going to have a press conference, so you won't get to ask him the question. You won't get to ask the question, sir, how do you feel about the flag? How do you feel about it? Maybe somebody knows. Maybe somebody in this audience, the Chris Plant audience, knows. Let's talk to Joe in Manassas, Virginia. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show. Line 5 is Joe. Joe, welcome.
I'm 71. Yeah, thank you very much. Back when I was younger, I was arrested for defacing and defiling a flag. And although there were certain circumstances, I wasn't guilty of it, but I was still arrested for it. And it was null prost in court, which means I wasn't guilty or not guilty. They just said, we're not going to accuse them. But and it was something stupid. So I had to apologize. But then, I totally 100% agree with President Trump. You should respect the flag. And even though it happened with me and it was a bad situation, I still firmly believe that you should respect the flag. And you should stand up and put your hand over your heart or take your hat off when you're saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And you should do this at ball games because it's good for the country. And we have to, it shows good conservative values also.
Well, Joe, so I'm with you. And I do believe if someone's saying I'm an American, then you are required, I think, to respect the flag and at least understand what it stands for and how it got to be where it is. Now, can I ask you, was this Was this, you said it was when you were younger, was this an anti-war protest thing?
No, it was stupid. I took a 48-star flag because I didn't think it was still a flag of the United States. Yes, it was a flag, but it wasn't the flag. And this is in the 70s, and it was not now, I was a big hippie back then, but I still loved America, and I would never have protested against the United States for anything.
Okay.
So it was a 48-star flag. I laid it down to cover some plants up, and the police department came by, and they didn't like it, so they arrested me for it. But the circumstances were I was not defacing and defiling and trampling upon a flag of the United States. So they were wrong, but it was still a stupid thing to do.
But lesson learned.
I learned my lesson.
It carried through your lifetime. Kind of got you. You were scared straight after that. That's good.
And they never gave me back my flag either. I wish they'd given it to me. But anyway, God bless America. And I just love our country, and I love what Trump is doing for us. And thank God that he's the voice in the wilderness crying out and asking us to stand up for America.
Well, thank you, Joe. It's a very interesting story, and wow, a great perspective on this conversation. It just amazes me that both Donald Trump and Joe Biden on the same side of things. At least one version of Joe Biden was on the same side of things as Donald Trump. Mr. Trump staunchly supporting a 1-year mandatory sentence for anybody who burns, desecrates, defiles the flag of the United States of America. And at one point in time, Joe Biden thought the same thing. This was before hair plugs, because when you watch the video, you could see that Biden got the plugs after this. So maybe the plugs changed his mind. I don't know. While I'm on the phones, let's take a couple more calls. They are lining up as well. I mentioned we had on line 6, Joe was calling about Kamala Harris, because we talked about Kamala Harris and her telling lies. Joe, you have an area you want to make sure we don't miss.
Yeah. Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Essentially, Kamala is very vulnerable on what I call kitchen table issues. What bills do you decide to pay on Sunday night? And inflation is a key thing that's really no one really has talked about. Well, I talked about it, but no one has really come up with a solution except Donald Trump. Basically, what you have to do is reduce energy prices. And their policies increase energy prices. The people that get hurt most are the people that are low income and fixed incomes. And there's another part of this equation that this whole thing goes back to carbon dioxide. I'm an engineer, scientist. Everybody has forgotten the other half of the equation. You restrict carbon dioxide, you restrict oxygen. Plants take carbon dioxide in with water, produce food, and give out oxygen. There's evidence that the oxygen level on the Earth has decreased. Now, you can work with 400 parts per million of carbon dioxide, but you can't work with less oxygen. You die within 4 minutes. And that's only half the situation.
Well, I know this is scientific, and sometimes people get glazed over on it, Joe, but I want to address two quick things here. Number one, you're right. Kamala Harris has a vulnerability on energy. We have a video of her saying she would ban fracking. She would overall ban fracking, and she would be all in on raising taxes in order to fund the Green New Deal, which would cost trillions and trillions of dollars to do and hurt the economy. But most importantly, when you talk about this energy madness and the CO2 madness on the left, there is a study that came out yesterday, a peer-reviewed study that shows that CO2, carbon dioxide, has zero impact on climate change. This study published yesterday on the High Wire If you read thehighwire.com, it's actual journalism. Tracy Beans and Michelle Edwards have the story there, and it is science. A scientific study that shows substantial evidence that carbon dioxide emissions in the atmosphere have zero impact on the Earth's global temperatures. And this study puts a conclusion out there that most publications that are lefty are going to try and poo-poo it, to use a technical term. This is from Science Direct in March of 2024, confirms that the warming effect of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is naturally limited, and the limit was reached decades ago. So the whole climate change thing is a scam, and it's a scam to gain control and to get money and control people and where they live and what they do, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason why we're having a powerfully warm series of years was confirmed by NASA and the British Space Agency a year ago, March. There was a volcano that erupted under the Pacific Ocean, and it sent 70,000 swimming pools full of water into the stratosphere. And that water, unlike volcanic debris, when a terrestrial volcano erupts and throws ash and dust into the atmosphere and creates cooling, the water that shot up from beneath the ocean into the stratosphere creates a magnifying effect. And until that water evaporates back into the planet, we're going to have that magnifying effect, and it may take another 4 or 5 years. So all of the hype about climate change ain't real. And the CO2 argument has now been put to rest. I will post a link to this story on Twitter X because I think it's a very important piece of actual scientific evidence to anyone who's out there screaming about climate change. It's just not real. It's Bravo Sierra. And it's all about getting control and power. So I don't know if you've seen this study, but I think it's a big stinking deal.
I just want to mention, I've seen similar studies. You know, the Earth goes through these cycles every 100,000 years of ice ages, and we're coming out of an ice age. That's why it's getting warmer. And the average temperature is actually getting cooler. If you look at the peaks, 80% of the time we've been below this, what we call normal temperature. If we head into another ice age eventually, that's going to really kill people, not the warmth. We can handle the warmth.
You're absolutely right. And usually winter kills more people than summer, and this is one of the arguments the left gets away with making. So it is sad that they're afraid of the truth, and when we bring it up, they discount it. Here's a peer-reviewed study and some actual science. And you're correct on energy. I talked to K.T. McFarland a week ago, and she said, if Donald Trump comes in and we drill, baby, drill, the price of energy goes down, which will bankrupt the Russians and the Iranians and the Chinese and the North Koreans. And it will do what Donald Trump tried to do in his first term, what Ronald Reagan got done when he was in charge. Thanks for being there. Appreciate the call. Great information. Joe, appreciate you. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
There's only one Chris Plant. The Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show on a Friday. Mike Opelka sitting in for my friend Chris Plant. Oh, boy, do we have a buffet of news to get to today. And some stories that are breaking, keeping an eye on everything that's happening over in Paris as the Olympics begin to kick off. I just witnessed something I didn't have on my list of strange things to happen. And that was Snoop Dogg carrying the Olympic torch, getting very close to the Olympic Stadium. That's right. Snoop Dogg carrying the Olympic torch for a short period of time. I wonder who figured that out or whose idea that was. He looked pretty good. Here's a guy who's rehabilitated his life and turned capitalism into great opportunity for great wealth for himself. What a country, right? And the Democrats want to take it away because they don't think you should have that ability to decide just how much you can earn. Well, people like Elizabeth Warren, they want to tax unrealized gains. It is insanity. We also had a story. I'm just into the weird story moment here as we're wrapping up this second hour of the program today. A court in the state of Ohio, the Supreme Court of Ohio, has ruled that boneless chicken wings can have bones. I want you to hear that again. Boneless chicken wings can have bones. There was a suit that went all the way to the Supreme Court of the state of Ohio, and according to the court, you don't have a reasonable expectation when you order boneless chicken wings not to encounter a bone. Just a little bizarre. My question for the people of Ohio, have you solved every other problem that it's down to this? And maybe the Ohio Supreme Court should change its name to the Ohio Food Court. Boneless chicken. Boneless chicken wings can have bones. Nobody understands the truth anymore. It's Mike Opelka for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.